Hi guys, this is Mike L from the Comic Book Syndicate. We are in Chicago for the first time since 2011, and we're here to watch a very in-depth panel discussion with Mark Millar, making a very rare convention appearance. Mark Millar is the creator of Kick-Ass, Kingsman, Jupiter's Legacy, and many others. Enjoy.
Please welcome to the stage, Mark Millar! Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thanks for coming. Are you guys excited he's here? This is your first convention appearance in like 9 years, aside from San Diego, where I'm sure you were on a short rope. So what has brought you back into this arena?
Do you know what? The last time I was in Chicago, I had such a good time that I can remember about 45 minutes of it. I was drunk for like 4 days, and
We
I
won't
want to
tell
do that
anyone,
again.
right? So it's there's something unique about this setting where, as an artist, it's a chance for you to get actual feedback from people who are passionate about your work. And I'm just curious, out of all your projects, what do people hone in on the most? You have so many great, great things to talk about. What is you hear the most, do you think?
I think weirdly, probably Kick-Ass. Kick-Ass is one. Even though Kingsman was bigger, Kingsman.
But Kick-Ass was so incredible.
But people liked it because it got a kind of niche thing to the point where at Halloween a couple of years ago in Glasgow, I saw 2 girls walking around dressed as Hit Girl. And like, it's not unusual in Scotland to see women walking around holding knives. That's like normal, you know. But they were actually wearing costumes, which made it much less scary. You know?
Yeah, they were actually they were cosplaying. There actually is a rumor that Hit Girl may have a spin-off series. Is there any truth to that? Can you just tell us right here?
Well, we sold our company to Netflix last year, you know. So like, but the 2 that we didn't put in the sale was Kick-Ass and Kingsman. And Hit Girl's just one of those things people like. And Matthew Vaughn and I were talking on the phone this week. We were saying like we should do more of this. It's great, you know. And we were thinking about a series of individual Hit Girl movies, you know. So that was literally just this week we've been talking about it, and we're doing books of that right now. So we would spin those off into movies as well. That's something. But the thing is, you know, could you do it without Chloe Moretz? Because Chloe Moretz is Hit Girl, isn't she? It's like Hugh Jackman and Wolverine, you know.
I know, she's amazing. And I mean, I know I would be so excited for a spinoff, and so would my kids. It's such a great franchise. Let's talk about all your stuff. Let's talk about Marvel, and you had a lot of influence with Civil War and Logan, and what sort of is the difference of taking a comic and adapting it to the screen, and how do you go about that?
Well, luckily someone else does all the hard work, you know. I mean, I wrote those stories like 10 years ago, and I never thought anything was happening with them, and then just bit by bit, you see them all starting to appear on screen. So The Ultimates was a book I did about 17 years ago where I had Samuel L. Jackson just as a gag as Nick Fury. And then a few years later, Samuel L. Jackson gets cast as Nick Fury, you know? So it's really cool. I mean, we never anticipated this at all. We were just happy to be working. You know, we thought, this is great, somebody's paying us to do comics, this is awesome. And then it goes to the next level, and suddenly there's the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, I mean, it went to the next level with you. I mean, you have taken it, you know, all the way.
Well, I've spent my entire life trying to avoid having a real job, and I'm so far so good, you know.
How did you enter into the comic business? It's such a hard industry to sort of like break into. What was your origin story?
Well, it's funny, for me, it was actually, there was nothing else I wanted to do. Like, I couldn't imagine doing anything different. And you know, you hear priests say that, they have a vocation or whatever, you know, and like Batman had that sense of vocation, you know, so, you know, and it's a similar thing, you know, there was nothing I wanted to do more than just do comic books. And from I was 4 or 5, I was putting them together. And one of my kids, actually, I can see her going the same way. Like, she's just turned 6, and she made a comic book 2 weeks ago. And she sold 28 copies of it, and she made £55, which is about maybe $60, you know. And it was amazing. She sold it at a family wedding, and I said, "Why you can't?" She took a box to sell, and she took her bank for money. And she said, "I know that they're going to feel they have to buy it because all the families at this thing, you know." So she's pretty canny. She's pretty good.
And that's right. You taught her well. What comics influenced you early in your career? And then I want to talk about your deal with Netflix. But let's go back. What influenced you early on?
Well, I think when I was a kid, I was told that Superman and Batman and all these guys were real. Like, my brother just lied to me. Like, I've got 4 older brothers, and they just make shit up sometimes, you know. And like, they told me that Superman was a historical figure. So I grew up thinking Superman, Batman, all these guys were just out there somewhere, you know. So I was always fascinated by them, and it was a bit of a Santa Claus moment when I was about 7, finding out they weren't real, you know. But by that point, I was already super invested. You know, I thought I could maybe be a sidekick or something like that, you know. So I just loved this stuff growing up, and I couldn't wait to do it. So when I was at school, when I should have been doing my chemistry and my physics and all this stuff, I was drawing pictures of Spider-Man and stuff, you know. So like, you know, Stan Lee's stuff from the 1960s was reprinted in the 1980s. Oh, Stan Lee fan over there?
Yeah, just one, right?
But in the 1980s, we were getting, in Scotland, because we're a kind of third world country, you know, we were getting reprints of the 1960s American comics. So I grew up with the best comics there is, you know, like Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, all that stuff. And I also loved Superman. The Superman movie came out when I was a little kid. And for me, that was it. The minute I saw the Superman movie, I was in, and there was nothing else I was going to do with my life.
Well done. You've done it. Before we talk about the acquisition, let's talk about, I think it was 2007, you founded Millar World, where your company, where it was a 50-50 sort of split between artists and the company, which was a really new model at that point in time. What was the impetus behind founding the company?
It was actually Stan Lee. I was interviewing Stan Lee for a magazine, and I was feeling, it was back in 2003 actually, it was a little bit earlier, and Stan said to me, "What are you working on?" And I told him I was doing all these big books at Marvel, and he said, "You should think about doing your own stuff, creating your own thing." He said, "You know, that there's such amazing opportunities now." He said, "I wish I could have owned the copyright on all my things when I was doing Marvel comics in the 60s. And I hadn't actually thought about it before. I was just happy to be doing the stuff I loved growing up. And Stan said to me, "Go off and do this yourself, try it." So I put down the phone and started writing Wanted. Like genuinely that day I started writing Wanted, and we sold it as a movie within weeks. It was crazy, before the comic came out. And I thought, this is quite easy. This is quite easy. Then I did another one, and we sold that too. And it was just like, right, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. This is great, you know. So, and I've been lucky. We've sold like 16 of them now, you know. So
I know, it's amazing. And then obviously now the acquisition of Netflix has changed sort of the scope a little bit.
Yeah.
How has your work routine or daily work routine changed now that Netflix is in the picture?
Well, it's kind of weird because we sort of have a boss, but the Netflix guys are so cool. It's kind of like the boss you want, you know. It's like Bruce Wayne being your boss or something, you know. Yeah. It's great, you know. And we've had a brilliant time. My wife and I run the company together, and we run it in Scotland. There's a London office and there's the LA office as well. And just occasionally we get on a plane, but otherwise most of the time we run it all out of Glasgow, where we live. And so what I do is I create a certain number of comics every year, and then on top of that, I have to create a certain number of shows and movies as well. So I think it's about 7 projects a year I have to do is what I'm contracted of, on top of what we sold. But I love it. I mean, I'm actually getting to do what I want to do, which you can never complain about. It's a lot of work, but it's really exciting.
Do you have a catalog of ideas, or you know, a well that you go to when you're creating a new project, or what's the process of creating, you know, from you know, inception?
Well, what I do is like Old Man Logan. I don't know if you guys have seen the comic of this. You know, I did the comic about 10 years ago.
Right? Come on. We're here because
I just threw that in there. But I started that with a little drawing of an old Wolverine. I had his hair cut short, and I had him looking a little grizzly, and he was just living out in the middle of nowhere. And then the story came from that. Like I drew that picture, and then I created the story of how he got to be there. And that's the way I tend to work. I come up with a visual, and then I work a story out of it, and I create 2 or 3 scenes, and then build a story from there, you know. So it's a very organic process the way I do it. But I have little notes all over the house that makes me look like a serial killer, you know, because it's just like people's heads exploding or somebody getting shot.
There's a fine line, right?
And what's awful is my youngest kid, who's 4, like I'll find her colouring them in, which is the most disturbing thing. You know, there'll be little cranes over a murder scene or something like that, you know, so God knows what's going to happen in the future.
And so it's usually, you start with that visual thing, and then how does the story sort of play out? What's the next step once you have that image?
I just think of 3 or 4 cool scenes and then start to build the story around it. And Stephen King's got the best description of this. I don't know if you guys have read his book on writing, but he said, like, stories almost already exist, and you try and excavate them without screwing them up. You try and dust them away like an archaeologist and try and raise them to the surface. And that's kind of what I do. I always feel the story's kind of there already, and I try as best as I can to kind of make it real, you know? And every writer I know says the same thing. They're like, it sounds weird, but it's kind of the way it tends to work.
Mm-hmm. So how many characters do you have in development at any given point in time?
Well, at the moment, we sold 17 franchises to Netflix as part of that deal, you know. But I think we'll do 29 in total over the next few years is the plan. You know, we'll do sequels and everything as well. And it sounds like a lot, but comic guys work quite fast. You know, like, I meet my movie pals and they're like, oh, we're so tired, we do one movie every 3 years. I'm like, we do 7 things a year, you know, so like, if you enjoy it, it works for you, you know?
Oh, absolutely. So if there is such a thing as downtime for you or relaxation, what do you do to, like, what do you geek out about aside from just comics?
In my spare time, I literally just drink. I just drink, you know,
I think people here may be able to relate, right?
But I finish working at 6 o'clock every night and I play with the kids and then we go to the pub, you know, so like, this is why I'm in such incredible shape. You know?
No, you look great, you look great, you'll fit right in here. I know you guys probably have questions. There's mics in the audience, so if you want, you can line up and we'll get through as many people. And you also I had a lot of people tweeting me questions for you, so I'm gonna pull up some of those.
Okay.
David Black would like to know, when can we expect to read Chosen Book 2?
Funnily enough, very soon. This is a project, for those who don't know, I did this project in 2003, and it's one of the projects we're developing at Netflix at the moment. And I've been saying for years I was going to write book 2, and we plan to do a second series of it when we do the TV show, so I have to write book 2 quite fast. So I think I'm going to move very quickly on this, so hopefully the end of this year we'll maybe get the next American Jesus book out. You know?
Oh, okay.
But for anyone who doesn't know what this project is, it's a sequel to the Bible. If you think the Bible sold lots of copies, and I thought, I'm going to cash in on this, you know. So I've written a sequel, and it's good, you know. So.
All right.
Think about like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Mark again, right? So
right. And then again. And Xander would like to know, is War Heroes ever going to conclude?
Possibly, I'm not sure. The weird thing is I'm doing so many things now, you know, that in my mind I'm like, yeah, I'll definitely do that in 2025. You know? So that's the way I'm looking at some of these things.
So you have your own cinematic plan for...
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And how many years does it cover?
I've got 7 years roughly mapped out, you know, so like, Scottish people don't live that long, so I have to move fast, you know, so like,
that's amazing. We asked Chosen, and okay, so let's talk. You had kind of alluded to the fact that you were a little bit done with Marvel and DC, and you were happy to be working independently. Yeah. What are the real benefits of having the control yourself versus a big universe that you're betrothed to?
Do you know, it's amazing, like I did a book called Civil War years ago, you know, which was the biggest selling book I'd done, you know, it went down really well, but it was so hard because you're dealing with so many other people, you know, there's lots of moving parts, there's lots of other writers whose projects tie in with your book and everything, and it was very satisfying but difficult, you know, whereas doing something like Kick-Ass is so easy, because it's just me. You know, I write the story, Johnny Romita draws it, and there's nobody to check in with, and there's something lovely about being your own boss, and even at Netflix, they let me run the division, you know, so like my wife and I just completely do what we were doing before. The guys are great, they're very relaxed about this stuff, and we just continue as it was. So I think I just couldn't go back now, but it was weird because the reason this became a story a couple of weeks ago about me not going back to Marvel and DC, it made it look like it was a press release or something, but somebody said to me online, would you ever go back to Marvel and DC? And I said, no, I don't think so, I left years back. And then some lazy internet journalists put up a thing saying Millar condemns Marvel, DC will never go back and everything, you know.
Like, that's not what I said.
I know, but you just have to accept that's the world, you know. But then people were picking it up and then exaggerating the story further and saying Millar would like to kill Marvel and DC, you know. So, you know.
I did not mean that. Let's talk about the new property you have coming out for Netflix. I think we have a couple slides of it.
This is cool. This is worth seeing.
And tell us the premise behind the story. It's really interesting.
Well, this is a book we have coming out. It's going to be a Netflix show called The Magic Order, and we're doing a comic book of it as well. Just because I love doing comic books, I didn't want to go full time into shows and movies. And the setup is an adult fantasy thing. It's kind of like, if you liked Harry Potter when you were 10, now you're 25, this is for you, you know. So I wanted to do something that was kind of like The Sopranos meets Lord of the Rings or something, you know, something set in the present day, real world, but kind of, it's the reason we never see anything supernatural in real life. There's a bunch of these people who basically take care of all the bad shit that's out there. So we've never seen a ghost, we've never seen a monster, and this family is the reason that hasn't happened. So they live in Chicago, interestingly enough, just coincidentally. They live in Chicago, and if there's a supernatural problem, these are the guys who deal with it. And there's been no monsters for 1,000 years because this family have kind of kept everybody safe. So, you know, Netflix said to me, if you're doing this as a comic, we want the best artist in the world on it. And I called the best artist in the world. I called this guy called Olivier Coipel, who is amazing. You guys might know him from Marvel. He's fantastic. That's Olivier's dad up there clapping. And like, but we can't believe how good this artwork is. I think some of the pages might pop up magically behind me here, but if you guys haven't seen any of this stuff online, it's spectacular. I mean, Olivier was already good, but this is just the best work I've ever seen from him.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think it's
so good, so great. So I think maybe the next slides might have some of the pages. But this book's coming out in June. And it's going to be fun, and obviously we'll get moving on the TV show and everything as well, so that should be about a year behind it, all going well. There's some of the pages here.
Yeah, there's some of the...
Hey, actually, this page, I think, is a mum and dad lying in bed and a kid coming in and killing the dad, like shoving a knife up the dad's chin. And I think this just comes, you know, you write from your subconscious. Every time we go to bed at night, there's a kid creeps in from one of the rooms and wakes us up, and I think this is just like my life. I've just realised now I'm looking at it.
That says a lot about you. No, I'm excited for this. I love the premise because it's again the day versus night sort of juxtaposition within the characters, and then the society that's protecting, you know. So it sounds...
Well, that's it's like, I love stuff that looks like the real world just now, so people kind of relate to it. You know, it looks like The Sopranos, but imagine Tony Soprano dealing with supernatural situations. You know, so that's the setup.
That's a great. That seems to be your little niche. I mean, that's how Kick-Ass was too. There was a lot of humor and reality, and even though you were dealing with this surreal circumstance, obviously of this young girl and her father, but there was just that genuine sort of humorous vibe to it. I think that's what made the movie so special.
Well, Kick-Ass, on all honesty, was autobiographical, genuinely autobiographical. When I was 15, one of my friends and I said we were going to be real life superheroes, and we went to karate and things like this. We designed costumes and we were going to patrol Glasgow, you know, and we never did it. And I know people have done this now, there's people who do this now, but I remember the plan was, let's do this will be amazing, and then we came to our senses and didn't do it.
How long did the training last?
About a week, you know. So, yeah. And we always said, when we were older, we said, you know, we'd have been stabbed to death on the first night out, you know, and that's what Kick-Ass is about. It's about trying this in real life, because it's kind of hard to be Batman. Batman did a lot of push-ups, you know. And so
ate a lot of protein. How do you think, you know, you're talking about your influences and when you were young and now, how do you think the comic industry has evolved in general and the audience has changed now that we have modern media and it's broad reaching?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, is this not the world you always dreamed of, really? You know? I mean, who'd have guessed there would even be the idea of a Black Panther movie was unthinkable when I was a kid, you know? Like, the idea of a Superman or Batman movie was, like, rare. I mean, I was excited about Superman 4 coming out, right? I was really excited about that, you know? So, all these characters, you know, like, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy or Black Panther, stuff that most people had never heard of, now making more money than Star Wars. It's insane, but it's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, it's so good, and I still feel a huge glee about the fact that when I was growing up, I was the only person who knew that Tony Stark was Iron Man for 100 miles in every direction, right? But now my aunt knows who Pepper Potts is. You know, my aunt knows who Pepper Potts is.
It's amazing.
I love it. It's like, I worry I've bumped my head and I'm imagining this world that we're living in right now because it's so great, you know? And, you know, I mean, I know there's a lot of people in cosplay here and everything as well. I remember, like, when cosplay first came in, it was like 2 or 3 people did it and people were kind of embarrassed and would get changed at the show itself. I saw people walking through the streets in full cosplay and people were high-fiving them in the streets, you know? It's amazing. It's like, this is the world I've always dreamed of. Apart from Trump, everything else is amazing. Is absolutely amazing.
There's something about, I mean, I think there's something really relevant about the suspension of disbelief right now.
Yeah.
Because of the political climate, because of where we are. As a world, and this genre, it's sort of the right time for this suspension of disbelief and fun sort of genre to explode.
You're totally right. I mean, if you look at the kind of movies that were getting made in better economic times and better social times, they're very serious and hard-hitting movies and everything. But whenever times are tough, we want escapism. And you must always remember Superman, the first superhero, was created by two Jewish kids in 1938, when things were pretty bad, So these characters let us escape from the world when the world's pretty tough. And it's almost, I think it's essential. It's almost essential for people. And things have been hard. The reason superhero movies, I think, have worked so well for 20 years is we've never had a climate like the post-2001 climate. I mean, it's been constant wars, recession and everything. So what could be more fun than to get 2 hours watching Thor Ragnarok, and you don't worry about anything for a couple of hours and it's nice. I think it's great.
Do you have a favorite Marvel or a favorite DC movie that has been in the cinematic universe?
Oh, without a doubt. I think the last couple of years there's been some really great ones. I think Ragnarok is amazing. Anybody into Ragnarok? Yeah.
And underrated.
Amazing. So good. So good. Who'd have guessed this guy? I mean, have you guys seen Hunt for the Wilder People, the New Zealand movie? That I went to see that with my nephew. And I said to my nephew, "What's it about?" And he said, "It's about this kid who's going to a farm in the New Zealand care system." And I was like, "I'm not going to see this. This sounds terrible, But I went and I laughed all the way through it. And then I heard this guy was doing Thor, and I was like, "This is amazing." And it's my favorite Marvel movie. James Gunn's Guardians is amazing as well. I mean, I love Guardians of the Galaxy.
I mean, that's
so good.
Probably my top.
So
one
good.
of my top.
But I feel there's something happening now, though. There's a shift, isn't there? There's a little shift, like the Avengers and all that kind of stuff. We've seen Iron Man, we've seen Captain America and everything, and I feel as if that's coming to a natural end. Like Avengers 3 and 4 feels like the chapter closing a little
Infinity.
bit. And that stuff,
Yeah, I agree.
And I feel as if Black Panther and Thor and everything, Guardians, there's a tone to these movies that's different and just more fun, that I'm more interested in myself.
Well, like the original Avengers had that sort of like light cadence.
Playful, yeah.
Very playful.
The DC movies, I always hope for the best. I always do hope for the best.
Is that emoji?
But I do always, I'm like, the crazy guys online who talk about it too much. I'm that guy. Like I come out of the DC movie and do 20 tweets complaining.
We're all those people, so it's okay.
But you never know, the next one could be great.
Well, Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman was good, and I've got high hopes for Aquaman. Weirdly, I think James Wan's a great director. He's really, really fun, and he's got some great ideas for this. He was talking about some of the visuals that he had, and it sounded, when I spoke to him about a year ago, it sounded amazing. So I'm kind of hoping. I never thought I'd be saying I'm really counting on this Aquaman movie, but here I am.
Yeah. No. Well, if you guys have questions, again, you can line up in the aisle. And I know you had sort of like a fun little quiz planned.
There is. We were thinking that we would take somebody from the audience for lunch. Right? So somebody for lunch. But what we're going to do is get volunteers. We need 4 people, 2 guys, 2 girls, up on stage, and we're going to do a quiz on the books.
So if you think you are really knowledgeable about what is going to be asked up here, raise your hand, and we need 2 guys and 2 girls. Okay, you, come on up. Who else is gonna go? You, come on up, okay?
It's a free lunch. It's a free lunch.
And now let's get 2 ladies. Come on, don't be shy. Any ladies out there? All right. Then, in general, if you're a guy.
I can see
okay, there's a girl
jumping
one.
up there.
And any other ladies? Yep.
Oh, there's one here too.
Perfect. Okay, great.
Right. So you guys have these seats, and I'll quiz you. Hey there, nice to meet you. How you doing? What's your name? Kenny. Vic. Nice
Okay,
to
you
see
guys come over here. You can sit here. That's a great shirt, by the way. I love that. Kenny and Vic. Okay.
Hello there. Nice to see you. How you doing?
All right.
How you doing?
And what's your name? And Robin?
Hi, Ellie.
And Ellie. Okay. Kenny, Vic, Robin, and Ellie. Give them a big round of applause, guys. They have no idea what they're in for. And neither do I.
Now, to make it a little bit interesting, I thought we'd make the questions about biochemistry. Okay?
Ellie's like, yes.
Now we're going to do, whoever answers the most correct answers here gets a fantastic free lunch at 2:30 or something. I can't remember. I'll tell you after the thing, right? So, so I'm going to, because it's a Millar World panel, I'm going to make it Millar World questions, right? So I'm going to just put the questions out there, first person to answer, and we'll count it up. So if somebody can keep track of who's getting the most here, right? Okay.
I'll try to keep track.
Okay.
And if you think you know the answer, just shoot your hand up.
Okay, Kick-Ass. Who played Red Mist in the movie? Just say McLovin. Okay, Wanted. Starring Angelina Jolie, James McAvoy, and Morgan Watt. One each.
Go ahead, Ellie.
Right, a hard one.
Freeman. All right. She just got really excited. It's okay. It's exciting to be up here.
Who was the artist on Starlight?
Yes.
You just put your hand up and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
He's like
taking
the
a point
guy that
away.
buzzes in on Jeopardy, but he's.
Pavlov. Goran Parlov. Casual racism. I don't know. I'll give you. Did you get Goran? Did you get the Goran part? Right. Okay. Cool. Okay.
So are we counting that?
Well, yeah, we'll
Okay.
do that one as well. We'll do one last question.
Okay, you guys. One more question.
Frank Quitely is the artist on the Jupiter's Legacy books. One of the most famous artists in comics. Did All-Star Batman, All-Star Superman. Lives in Glasgow. One of my neighbours. We go out all the time. But it's not his real name. His real name is not Frank Quitely. His real name is something else. Does anyone know what his real name is?
He does know it.
What's the second name? Do any of you guys know?
What was that? You got given the answer.
Have you ever seen that movie Quiz Show? You know? Vincent Deegan. Listen, you know what? We've actually booked 4 extra places. You're all invited to lunch, and there's 10 of us. There's 10 of us.
That is awesome.
The bad news, you're paying. I'm only kidding. So listen, hang back stage after, and we'll sort something out. We'll all go for lunch.
Hey, give these guys a big round of applause. That's not easy to come up here and. Good job, guys. Yes, good job. Yes, okay, right over this way, and then we'll come up after the panel and we'll sort out the details. And do you have a question over here?
Oh, hang on, that is a great outfit. Could you come up a little and let us see that?
Yes, give us
That's
a little,
cool.
yeah, very nice.
My name is Alex. I live in like central Illinois, like 3 hours down, but what is your favorite story that's been adapted to the big screen?
I think for me it's possibly Kick-Ass. I think the first Kick-Ass film, like there was something just kind of magical about it, you know, like walking onto the set, something that was a doodle on a page, and then suddenly you walk onto a set and there's 300 people all standing around wearing baseball caps that say Kick-Ass and t-shirts that say Kick-Ass, and seeing Nicolas Cage standing in costume and seeing Chloe in costume and everything, and it was nuts. I actually felt it's the closest a man can probably come to giving birth to a baby. I think, you know, it was like it was something that we brought into the world, and it was lovely, and it was my first experience of that as well. So it was quite emotional. It was really nice. I heard Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, when they went onto the set of Good Will Hunting, they saw the set they'd written into the script, and they burst out crying. And at least I didn't cry, but I came close. I think, you know, it was like it was nice. It was good.
What was the training for Chloe like for that after she was?
Unbelievable, to the point where like Chloe Moretz was 10 or 11 when
Yeah,
she
she's
started
really
doing
young.
that movie, but she trained for months. She did 12 weeks training before she started shooting, and some of the best Korean stunt people in the world, you know, like were training her, and she was deadly by the end of it, to the point where, you know, when people are really good at martial arts, they have a kind of confidence the way they stand, and she had this confidence, and she'd be standing with us, and we'd all be physically intimidated by her. Like, I would find that I would always try and take the piss out of her, and then I would be like, oh my god, I've gone too far, and then get a little bit scared of her. You know?
Yeah.
But she's great. I mean, she really took to it, you know.
Yeah, her performance and Natalie Portman in The Professional are like the two performances
It's
I
great
think of
roles
when I
for
think
young
of
girls.
young
Yeah.
female actors. Thank you for your question. Hi.
Oh, sorry.
Central Illinois. I was just wondering, who's a comic artist you've never worked with that you'd love to work with?
Well, Olivier Coipel was the one. I've been after Olivier for 20 years, genuinely 20 years. And I've been like, you know that creepy stalker? You know, like anywhere he went, I was standing with flowers, like trying to get him, you know? And he eventually just said, yeah, okay, let's do this, you know, and we're doing Magic Order. The other two guys on my hit list is Travis Charest, who's amazing. Don't know if you guys have, he's just phenomenal. And Adam Hughes, who's fantastic as well. And I've had covers from these guys, but I love full issues. But sometimes the best artists are really slow, and unfortunately, they take quite a long time. So, but you never know. Fingers crossed. I'm just hoping they need the money enough, you know, that they come and work with me at some point. You know. Thanks.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, my name is Jerome Green. I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I just want to say thank you for writing Superior. It raised awareness for MS. My mother had MS, and it showed the effects that it can have on the body. So I just want to thank you for writing that and helping raise awareness for MS.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
You mentioned how Kick-Ass was a little bit autobiographical.
Yeah.
Do you often pull storylines or ideas from the
All
quote-unquote
the
real
time.
world?
I've never done something that's not based on someone, which is always awful when they're made into movies, because then the people I've based it on see their life cheapened. You know, like, it's terrible. Like, I mean, Kingsman is based on about 4 different people I know, you know, including the name of the lead character. Eggsy is my old best friend from school, you know, so it's always really awkward sitting in the premiere and they're all looking around at you, but it's something, especially if it's relationship stuff, like Wanted, the James McAvoy character in Wanted did some really messed up relationship stuff, and that was all based on one of my friends. And I never knew it was going to be a movie at that point, you know, and I dreaded the movie coming out. The 3 years leading up to the movie coming out, I knew this was all going to be on screen, and you know, it was awkward.
Do you give the inspiration for the characters a heads up? Like, when you watch this.
I just make it a nasty surprise when they're sitting there, you know. So.
Hi.
I'm Alex from Wisconsin. So my question was, in the first Kick-Ass, you said it was like almost autobiographical. You're like oh, I could be that guy, you know,
yeah,
great superhero. And then in the second one, I guess what's like the inspiration for the second Kick-Ass book? I mean, it went over the top and kind of crazy, and wasn't like the first one. It felt like you could. Like that could happen.
Yeah.
And then so I'm just wondering where you got inspiration for the second Kick-Ass.
Well, I think the idea was to try and do a sort of Empire Strikes Back and make it bigger. You know, like if there's one hero out there for the first movie, the second one should be a group of them. And weirdly, it was happening in real life. I don't know if you guys saw it at the time, but there was a real life superhero movement. And 2 or 3 sort of people would go out dressed as superheroes, and then they started to meet up online, and then they would patrol areas of New York together as a gang. So it was really odd. I almost couldn't keep up with real life. It was actually happening on the news, which was great. So I mean, again, this is the world I dreamed of. Who would have guessed at some point we would actually have superheroes living among us, you know? There's no supervillains yet, which I think is interesting. It's just heroes, which is quite cool.
In your experience coming to conventions like this, have you ever met someone who actually does dress up and go out?
Oh yeah, I have, yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah, when I was doing signings in New York, some people came who were part of the real life superhero.
The coalition?
Yeah, and they were so different from what I expected. It was like guys who were ex-military, and they had like, you know, like proper skills. You know, it's like they would take them down. It was like meeting Batman. It was pretty cool. I was impressed.
It's so impressive, yes. Hi.
I'm Heidi from New York City. Hi.
Is that Heidi McDonald?
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, man? Hey. Anyway, strange meeting like this, Mark. You know, there's been a lot of rumors, and just to solidify for my own journalistic purposes, but you know, all the comics that you're doing that are coming out with Netflix,
yeah,
are those coming out from Image, or because there was a lot of like, oh, is Netflix going to start their own line of comics? So
yeah, no, they're still Image. It's funny. Washington Post yesterday had a typo where they said Netflix comics, but it's actually Image comics. Because Netflix, what we're doing is we're creating the shows internally. We're doing the new shows and the new movies and everything internally. And then because I love doing comics, I said in my contract, I want to keep doing stuff, you know? So we bring them out through Image Comics. It'll have the Netflix logo on it, but Netflix isn't getting into publishing. Like that's not part of the plan, you know? But there's been rumours of that for a while, and so many people got in touch with me and said, is there jobs going at Netflix? And I was like, it's basically still me in a room in my house. This isn't too exciting, you know?
Thank you. With the Netflix properties each year that you're responsible for creating and developing,
Yeah.
have you ever gone in and had a pitch where you're like, yes, this is definitely one that everyone's gonna love, and people were like, I don't know.
We don't have to pitch, which is amazing. We just do what we want to do. Like, so Millar World's an autonomous thing within Netflix. So like, what happens is I just create the stuff, and then there's somebody in the company who wants to make it as a show or a movie. It's crazy. But I think what's interesting is somebody like Disney or Fox have got 25 hours a year of material they have to get out there, but Netflix has 1,000 hours of original material every year, you know? So the enthusiasm is enormous, it's great. Everybody's like, how do we make this work instead of should we do this?
It's like sort of inversing the whole model.
Yeah, the way I always say to people is working at Netflix is kind of like working in Hollywood in the 20s.
Yeah.
It's just everybody's just learning as they're going along and having fun and putting out a huge amount of material, you know? And because Netflix has deep pockets, we're getting great filmmakers involved and everything as well. It's the most exciting. I've done this job since I was 19, and this is the most exciting period I've ever had. It's great.
It must be so freeing as an artist, not to,
yeah. And if you want to do any genre, you just do it, you know?
Yeah.
And there'll be somebody within the company who's interested in developing it, you know?
That's amazing. Hi.
Hi. Hey, Mark.
Hi there.
I'm Tim from Springfield, and I just had a question. You know, the movies that have been adapted from all your works.
Yeah.
They have so much action, but they also have so much humor involved. And anyway,
Everybody okay?
not sure where that came from, but I was just wondering, is there anything on set that you can describe or tell us about, like, incidents or things that were just like really kind of like shit your pants funny that happened that you can just share with all of us?
Any on set, either I guess pranks or funny instances?
Right.
Do you know what, it's funny, like there's so many things that you could say that would just end up all over the internet, right? So I'm having to be selective here. But I remember, you know, for those of you who've seen Kick-Ass, you know there's the worst swearing, there's the worst curse word there is, the C word in the movie, right? And I remember when it was in the script, it didn't seem so bad. But when you're watching a 10-year-old saying it, right? And worse than that is standing beside the 10-year-old's mum, right? And seeing the kids, you know, deliver that line over and over again, because there was like 20 takes. Because it was the beginning of an action scene, there was like 20 takes of this. And I was sweating, and I could just see the mum out the corner of my eye. And the mum said, it's okay, don't worry about it. And I said, this wasn't even in the script, she's improvising this, you know? So that's the only one I'm going to share.
That's awesome. Thank you, that was a great question. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, Mark. I'm a huge fan. I'm so happy that you're here in Chicago. I'm very grateful you're here. My name is Randall Armstrong. I'm from Tampa, Florida. Flew all the way out here to come see you.
Okay.
And I remember following a while back that, especially when Kick-Ass was getting made, and before Kick-Ass was getting made, you were working a lot with Matthew Vaughn. And I remember hearing that you wanted to actually film your own movies as well as like direct.
Yeah.
And I think you were working on a film, but I don't know what had happened with that. And also was wondering, since you are working a lot with Netflix, any opportunities or chances you get to direct any of your projects through Netflix?
I think probably will at some point. I mean, that project you're talking about was, I think it was 2011 or thereabouts, and it was called Miracle Park that I was writing and directing, and we got 3 days into production and then found out a much better version of it was already made. It was like done, and it was in the can, and it was, my idea was about a bunch of young people getting a hold of, you know, getting superpowers, and it was all being filmed on handheld cameras, and it is essentially Chronicle, but I was filming it like a year after Chronicle was made, you know? And somebody said to me, you know this movie's coming out in like 3 months' time, and I was like, oh God. So we just pulled the plug on it, and it's just, this stuff just happens sometimes. And then Kingsman started up, and I just never had time to go back and do anything else. But I definitely do plan to direct something, but I want to direct something modest. Like I see so many of my friends make terrible mistakes, which is like, yeah, I'm going to make a $200 million movie, you know, and it's like, no, make a $2 million movie, you know, do something small and then build up your muscle. It's a bit like going to weights and trying to bench press 800 pounds immediately, you know. So I'm going to just, in my spare time, do short films, do some stuff like that, and then build up and then lose a lot of money doing a $200 million movie. You know?
Awesome. Thank you.
I don't think you'll lose a lot of money. You do have to be an amazing multitasker, though, to take on, the directing, the producing, and then also the creative. So.
Well, it's funny. I see it up close with so many pals, and you're dealing with sometimes quite interesting personalities, and there's cash involved. And so, as well as the creative, there's so many political aspects to it. It's not for everyone. It's a tricky job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hi.
How you doing? Kenny Taylor, First Day Comics here in Chicago. We love your books, Mark. Two of my favorite books, Huck and Nemesis. Can we see some? When can we possibly see some follow-ups to those two titles? Because those are amazing.
Well, there's nothing at Netflix that we're not actively developing. We hit the ground running with this. So everyone.
Not for the movie, comics.
For the comic.
Comics. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. But again, because I've created so many franchises, it seems to take me about 6 years to go back and do the next one because I'm juggling like 18 or 19 franchises now, So Huck, I'd like to get back to in a couple of years, but Rafa Albuquerque, who drew it, he and I are doing a project that's going to be the second project that comes from the Netflix deal that we have just now. So Magic Order's the first one. We're doing another book together. In a couple of years' time, we'll probably go back to Huck once the movie's done.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Great question. We keep kind of circling back to Kick-Ass, especially as one of the projects that you didn't include in the acquisition with Netflix. Is that sort of like your baby project?
A little bit, but the guy who directs them also produces them, and he's a really good pal of mine, Matthew Vaughn. And I just didn't want to kind of complicate things for him because he and I had an agreement, that he was going to be running the film side of it for Kingsman and for Kick-Ass. So I pulled them out of the deal just to make life simple for him, and everything else went in. So we have some projects set up at Universal and Warner Brothers and things, but over time they'll come back to Netflix. So Netflix own everything else, really.
Mm-hmm. And how much of your time right now is spent developing comics versus the film and television aspect of things?
It's probably about 50-50. Like I'll do 4 comics a year and 3 things that are just film and TV. But so much of your time is spent on phone calls and all that kind of stuff as well. But my wife handles all the sort of adult stuff. She takes care of all the business side of it, and I can just crack on and really do the fun stuff. Really, So a lot of that film stuff she deals with. Really,
And when, let's say, for example, you're working on a comic in the morning, would you switch over and work on a different property in the afternoon, or if you're on one thing, you're just on it?
I can. It's really weird. It sounds so pretentious, but if your head is in one universe, it's really hard to jump over into something else.
I would think so.
I even can't do it in the same week. I have to do Monday to Friday one project and then jump over into a new project next week. But I usually take 12 weeks with a project and don't do anything else for those 12 weeks, and then jump onto a fresh project after those 12 weeks are up.
Well, it makes a lot of sense when you're trying to maintain the voice, the existing voices, and to curate new voices, that you would put just that focus on that project.
Even to remember what you were doing as well, it saves you rereading it all over again.
Hi, how are you?
I'm Neil from the suburbs. I want to thank you for running your annual competition the last couple of years. That was it was a great joy to submit something and then see why my work was so horrible compared to your one. So I was just wondering, because I know there was no competition last year, is that something you intend on reinstituting, or is that just over now?
Well, we did it 2 years running, but it was such a huge amount of work. It's just time. Because it took 3 weeks to go through everything, and I had friends helping me as well. But to read, we got thousands of submissions, so to do everybody justice and read all the scripts and look at all the art, you have to put the time in. And just with the Netflix deal, we were too busy last year, we just couldn't do it. And now we're setting up a lot of these shows and everything. So, but I definitely want to do it, because hands up in here if you're interested in working in comics. Stick your hand up. It's only, what? Seriously? I thought it'd be more. Really? All right. Well, forget it then.
No, but it's actually, it's a really good point. For someone entering the business, there's not a lot of exposure or opportunities. So to provide that platform is amazing.
Well, I just think the industry dies unless new blood comes in. I'm in my 40s. There should be people in their teens and their 20s coming through, and I'm amazed. I thought there'd be much more people who'd be into it as a career, because growing up in Glasgow, everybody I knew who was into comics also wanted to write and draw comics as well. But where do you begin? So I just thought a new talent thing every year was a nice place to start, But it was good. Some really great people have been published now and they've gone on to have careers. I think about 4 or 5 of them are now working full time, which I'm really delighted about. So I'm glad you enjoyed the process. Yeah.
And what is your advice to emerging artists in the industry?
don't get too good because I don't need the competition, you know. So like, stay at a certain level, you know. So, but I think like, just do it. You know, there's so many people talk about it for years. I mean, you must see this as well. You know, people who are like, oh yeah, I've always wanted to do that, but they never find the motivation or the confidence sometimes too, isn't it? You know, because some people are so talented, but they never actually find their moment, you know, and they never find the time, and they're scared of rejection. But I just think rejection's a part of the process, and at every level you will be rejected at some point, you know, but you'll never get to do something you really want unless you give it that first shot.
Absolutely, and when you're young, you're fearless. It's the time to go for it, I think.
Yeah, and even if you're old, you know, I mean, I think like we get submissions in from people in their 60s, which I loved, you know, it was like it's so unexpected. People from parts of the world I never imagined and everything. So I just think if you've got a story, tell it. You know.
Absolutely, and draw from your real life. Hi.
Hi, my name is Philippa. I'm from Orlando. One of my favorite series that you worked on was Chrononauts, and the story had so much potential, and the comic book series felt so much shorter than what I thought that entire universe could have built upon.
Yeah.
Are you hoping maybe, I don't know if it's one of the shows you're working on with Netflix, but I see so much potential for that being a fuller, like multi-season run. Are you potentially looking at that, or?
I've just finished the sequel, so we'll be bringing that up. So it's worked out really good. I'm really happy with it. Like the first book was set entirely in the past, and this one's set entirely in the future, so it's got a different flavour. But my plan is several of these books, and we're doing them as movies actually. We're not going to do them as a show, because they're over at Universal right now. They're one of the things that's been developed outside of Netflix, although Netflix now own the property. So we're doing it with Chris Morgan, who did The Fast and the Furious, and there's a great screenplay. It's really, really good, so we're just looking for a good director now. But I think that could be a really fun series of movies, and I'd like to have the books ready for them to be made. But I'm glad you liked it, that's great. Do you know, I'll tell you a weird thing that actually started off as a short film I was making about 5 years ago. I weirdly got a phone call from Ridley Scott's office, right, which doesn't happen very often, right, and this was like 5 years ago, and they said, we're making some short movies, would you be interested in doing a short sci-fi movie? And I was like, well, I've never actually directed anything yet, and they said, look, we'll give you a smallish budget. They were talking to, I think, about 10 filmmakers, and said, just come up with something odd, and I came up with Man's First Step in Time, kind of like Man Going Into Space, and it was all being televised. I was doing it as a time travel story, and then that project never happened. You know, the funding fell away from everyone, and the project was just lying there, and we just did it as a comic book for the fun of it, and it seemed to have caught on. So Sean Murphy, who I think is here this weekend, by the way, did the most amazing job on that, didn't he? I don't know if you guys have seen it, but he's an amazing artist. He's doing Batman right now, it's great.
Is that a good example of sometimes you don't know where a project is going to go until?
Exactly, you know, I mean, if we'd done that as a short film, it would have been a short online film, and if that had worked out, it would have been and gone by now. Whereas what we have now is a massive Hollywood franchise, you know? So what looked really sad, you know, 4 years ago is really happy, you know? So sometimes you have to just hang with it, you know? I mean, I was saying during the week that Red Sun, one of the Superman books I did years back, oh, thank you very much.
Great.
I came up with that when I was 6, and I pitched it when I was 13, and I sold it when I was 26, and it came out when I was 33. And I just always say to people, you know, if you do get a knock and everything, just remember, sometimes it just takes a while, you know. Hopefully it won't take 26 years the way it did with me, you know, but you know, sometimes you'll be surprised that what seems like bad news when you're going for a project turns out to be the best thing that ever happened later, you know.
Absolutely. Well, we are so glad that you were here. Are you guys glad he's here this weekend? It's so nice to see you out, and people can come talk to you and visit with you, and you're here through Sunday, right?
No, I'm heading off tomorrow night, so anybody wants me, I'm leaving about 4 o'clock tomorrow, but I'll be in the bar. If you want to find me, I'll just be in the bar tonight.
I mean, you've made that clear, so yeah, cheers to you.
It won't be hard to find me, you know.
All right, guys, please give one more big round of applause.